If someone handed you the keys to any car today and said, "This is the one you'll learn to drive in," would you know whether they were setting you up for success or for one of the most expensive mistakes of your life? Believe it or not, the first car you drive can shape your confidence, your driving habits, and even how much money you spend over the next few years. Some cars forgive rookie mistakes. Others punish them immediately. And here's the funny part. The cars most people think are perfect for beginners often aren't. So today, we're counting down 7 of the absolute best cars for first-time drivers in America. These aren't just cheap cars. They're reliable, safe, surprisingly fun, and packed with little details that make learning to drive far less stressful. Stick around until the end, because our number 1 pick is probably not the car you're expecting. Before we jump in, let me know in the comments, what was your very first car? Or if you haven't driven yet, what car do you hope will be your first? And don't forget to tell me what state you're watching from. It's always interesting seeing where everyone in the country is tuning in from. Now let's get started. Learning to drive is exciting. Right up until you're trying to parallel park while someone behind you starts honking after exactly half a second. Apparently, patience disappeared from American roads years ago. That's why choosing the right first car matters so much. A good beginner car doesn't just get you from point A to point B. It builds confidence. It helps you recover from small mistakes, gives you great visibility, doesn't cost a fortune to insure, and hopefully doesn't decide that today's the perfect day to turn on the check engine light just because it's Tuesday. One car that has earned its reputation over decades is the Honda Civic. It's almost impossible to have a conversation about reliable first cars without someone bringing it up. There's a reason for that. Actually, there are several reasons. The Civic has been part of American roads since the early 1970s, but it really became a household name during the 1990s and early 2000s. Families bought them. College students bought them. Commuters bought them. Even people who knew almost nothing about cars somehow ended up owning one. It became one of those rare vehicles that earned trust simply by refusing to quit. One of the biggest advantages for new drivers is visibility. Sitting behind the wheel of a Civic feels natural. You aren't looking over an endless hood like you're steering a yacht through downtown traffic. The windows are large, the controls are straightforward, and everything is exactly where you expect it to be. That sounds simple, but when you're already nervous about traffic lights, lane changes, and confusing intersections, simplicity is a huge advantage. Then there's fuel economy. Depending on the model year and engine, many Civics easily reach over 35 miles per gallon on the highway. Considering today's gas prices, your wallet will probably thank you every single week. And unlike some tiny economy cars that feel like they're being pushed around every time a truck passes by, the Civic manages to feel planted and stable at highway speeds. Another reason insurance companies generally like the Civic is that replacement parts are everywhere. Since Honda has sold millions of them across America, mechanics know these cars inside and out. Need a brake job? Easy. Need new tires? No problem. Need someone who knows how to work on it? Chances are there's a shop within 15 minutes. Of course, no car is perfect. Older Civics can become targets for theft, especially certain generations that are popular with enthusiasts. If you're buying used, always check the vehicle history. Make sure the maintenance records are complete, and never skip a pre-purchase inspection. Spending a couple $100s before buying can save you thousands later. That's probably the least exciting money you'll ever spend, but also some of the smartest. One fun fact many people don't know is that the Honda Civic wasn't originally designed to become America's favorite beginner car. It was created during a period when fuel efficiency suddenly became incredibly important because of the oil crisis in the 1970s. Honda focused on building a lightweight, efficient, dependable car. Decades later, those same design priorities still make it one of the smartest choices for someone just learning to drive. Now, let's move to a car that quietly built one of the strongest reputations in the automotive world without constantly demanding attention. If reliability had its own Hall of Fame, the The Toyota Corolla would probably have its own wing. The Corolla is almost boring, and I mean that as the highest compliment possible. Exciting? Maybe not. Predictable? Absolutely. And when you're learning to drive, predictable is exactly what you want. Toyota introduced the Corolla back in 1966, and since then, it has become one of the best-selling cars in the history of the automobile. More than 50 million Corollas have been sold worldwide. That's an almost unbelievable number. Think about it for a second. There are countries where it feels like every third driveway has one parked outside. Why do so many people trust it? Because it consistently delivers exactly what owners expect. Start the engine, drive to work, drive home, repeat. Day after day, year after year. It's almost as if the Corolla wakes up every morning thinking, let's not create any drama today. For first-time drivers, that's incredibly valuable. The steering is light, making parking much easier than in larger vehicles. The suspension absorbs rough roads surprisingly well, so potholes don't feel like you've accidentally driven into another zip code. The cabin is quiet enough to help reduce stress during longer drives, and newer models come loaded with advanced safety technology that would have sounded like science fiction just 15 years ago. Toyota Safety Sense, available on many recent Corolla models, includes features like automatic emergency braking, lane departure alerts, adaptive cruise control, and pedestrian detection. While these systems should never replace paying attention behind the wheel, they can provide an extra layer of protection during those first months when every driving situation still feels new. Another interesting advantage is resale value. Corollas tend to hold their value extremely well. That means if you decide to upgrade after a few years, you're likely to recover more of your investment compared to many competing compact sedans. But here's something people often overlook. Because Corollas are so dependable, many owners keep them for well over 200,000 miles with proper maintenance. It's not unusual to find stories of these cars reaching 300,000 miles, or even more, while still serving as reliable daily transportation. That's the kind of reputation money can't buy. We've only covered 2 cars so far, and already there's a clear pattern emerging. The best first car isn't necessarily the fastest, the flashiest, or the most expensive. It's the one that quietly helps you become a better driver every single day. But the next car on our list might surprise you even more, because it completely changes the idea that a beginner car has to be small, plain, or boring. The next car proves that your first vehicle doesn't have to be tiny to be easy to drive. In fact, for many new drivers, sitting a little higher off the ground actually makes learning less intimidating. That's exactly why the Subaru Crosstrek has become one of the smartest recommendations for first-time drivers across the United States. At first glance, the Crosstrek looks like it belongs on a hiking trail somewhere in Colorado rather than sitting in a high school parking lot. But that's part of its appeal. It combines the confidence of an SUV with the size of a compact car, making it surprisingly easy to maneuver through crowded city streets while still giving drivers a commanding view of the road ahead. That higher seating position makes a bigger difference than most people realize. Instead of feeling surrounded by massive pickup trucks and full-size SUVs, you're able to see farther ahead in traffic. For beginners, that extra visibility can reduce stress significantly because you're constantly aware of what's happening several cars ahead instead of reacting at the last second. Then there's Subaru's legendary all-wheel drive system. Unlike many competitors that only send power to all 4 wheels when slipping occurs, Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive is always working. If you live somewhere with heavy rain, snow, icy roads, or even rough gravel backroads, this system gives beginners an extra layer of confidence. No, it doesn't make you invincible. Physics still wins every argument, but it certainly helps maintain stability in situations where other vehicles might struggle. One interesting fact is that Subaru has developed one of the most loyal customer bases in America. According to multiple ownership studies over the years, a huge percentage of Subaru owners eventually buy another Subaru. That's not because the cars are flashy. It's because they consistently do exactly what people need them to do. The Crosstrek also comes packed with modern safety features. Many models include Subaru's EyeSight driver assist technology, which uses cameras mounted near the windshield to monitor traffic ahead. Features like automatic emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, lane centering assistance, and pre-collision warnings all work together to help reduce the likelihood of accidents. Now, before anyone starts typing, technology makes people lazy. You're absolutely right if people rely on it completely. These systems aren't substitutes for paying attention. They're backup players, not the starting quarterback. The real driver should always be you. Another reason beginners appreciate the Crosstrek is practicality. Fold the rear seats down, and suddenly you've got room for bicycles, camping gear, luggage, sports equipment, or enough groceries to survive an entire week without making another trip to Costco. And if you've ever been to Costco on a Saturday afternoon, you know surviving that experience deserves its own trophy. Maintenance costs also remain relatively reasonable compared to many other compact SUVs. Oil changes, brake replacements, and regular servicing won't usually leave your bank account crying itself to sleep. Fuel economy, depending on the engine and drivetrain, often lands around the low to mid-30 mpg range on the highway, which keeps operating costs manageable for students and young professionals. Of course, no vehicle is perfect. Some drivers find the standard engine a little underpowered, especially when merging onto fast-moving interstate highways. But honestly, for someone learning to drive, having a car that encourages smooth acceleration instead of drag race launches might actually be a blessing. Now let's switch gears entirely, because our next recommendation isn't an SUV at all. It's proof that sedans are far from dead, despite what social media might have you believe every time another crossover gets announced. The Hyundai Elantra has quietly transformed itself over the last decade from a budget alternative into one of the most impressive compact sedans available in America. If you remember older Hyundais from the early 2000s, you might still picture simple transportation with little personality. Those days are long gone. Modern Elantras look sharp enough that people sometimes mistake them for cars costing thousands more. The bold body lines, futuristic front grille, aggressive headlights, and clean interior design make the car feel far more premium than its price suggests. But looks only matter if the rest of the package delivers. And fortunately, it does. One area where the Elantra really shines is value. New drivers usually have limited budgets, and the Elantra manages to offer features that were once reserved for luxury brands. Depending on the trim level, you can find wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, heated seats, digital instrument clusters, large infotainment displays, blind spot monitoring, rear cross-traffic alerts, wireless charging, and even adaptive cruise control. 10 years ago, some of those features were showing up in cars costing twice as much. Another pleasant surprise is fuel efficiency. The standard gasoline models regularly achieve excellent MPG ratings, while hybrid versions can stretch fuel economy to numbers that almost seem unbelievable. That means fewer stops at the gas station and more money left for, well, literally anything more enjoyable than buying gasoline. Safety is another category where Hyundai has dramatically improved. The company's SmartSense suite includes automatic emergency braking, forward collision avoidance, lane keeping assistance, driver attention warnings, safe exit alerts, and several additional systems designed to reduce everyday driving risks. One particularly useful feature for beginners is blind spot monitoring. Every experienced driver remembers that terrifying moment when another car suddenly appears exactly where you thought nothing was. Blind spots are real, and they catch everyone eventually. Having an extra warning system doesn't eliminate the need to check your mirrors, but it certainly adds another layer of confidence. The Elantra is also remarkably comfortable during longer trips. Supportive seats, a quiet cabin, smooth suspension, and responsive steering make highway driving far less tiring than many people expect from an affordable compact sedan. And here's a fun piece of trivia. Hyundai wasn't even considered a serious competitor in the American market during its early years. Many buyers dismissed the brand entirely. Fast forward to today, and Hyundai is consistently winning design awards, safety awards, and quality recognition while competing directly against companies that once dominated the segment without much resistance. That's quite a comeback story. So far, every car on this list has shared one important trait. They all help build confidence instead of demanding perfection from the driver. That's exactly what a first car should do. But the next vehicle takes reliability to an entirely different level. So much so that some mechanics joke these cars get bored because they spend so little time in the repair shop. And that reputation is exactly why it deserves one of the top spots on our countdown. That reputation brings us to one of the easiest recommendations on this entire list: the Mazda 3. If you've never driven one before, you might assume it's just another compact sedan trying to compete with the Civic and Corolla. But the moment you get behind the wheel, you realize Mazda had a completely different idea. Instead of simply building reliable transportation, they wanted to build a car that actually makes driving enjoyable. And believe it or not, that's something beginners appreciate more than they expect. One mistake many first-time buyers make is believing that a beginner car has to be boring. It doesn't. A fun car isn't automatically a dangerous car. The Mazda 3 proves that you can have responsive steering, excellent handling, and impressive reliability all in one package without turning your insurance bill into a horror movie. Mazda has spent years refining what they call the Jinba Itai philosophy, a Japanese concept that roughly translates to the horse and rider moving as one. In simple terms, they want the driver to feel naturally connected to the car. That philosophy shows up in everything from the steering response to the seating position. For someone learning to drive, this creates an interesting advantage. The steering feels incredibly precise without being overly sensitive. The brakes respond smoothly, and the suspension gives excellent feedback about what's happening beneath the tires. Instead of feeling disconnected from the road, new drivers quickly develop confidence because the car communicates what's happening in a very predictable way. Inside, the Mazda 3 feels far more expensive than it actually is. Soft touch materials, a clean dashboard layout, supportive seats, and a premium-looking infotainment system create an interior that could easily fool someone into thinking they're sitting in an entry-level luxury car. Safety is another major strength. Depending on the model year, the Mazda 3 offers automatic emergency braking, lane departure warnings, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alerts, adaptive cruise control, and driver attention monitoring. These systems work quietly in the background without constantly bombarding you with unnecessary warnings. Here's a fun fact. Mazda is one of the few major automakers that remained independent for decades instead of becoming completely absorbed by larger automotive groups. That independence allowed the company to focus heavily on driving dynamics while still maintaining excellent reliability. Maintenance costs also remain reasonable, and fuel economy often reaches well into the 30 mpg range on the highway. Combine that with strong resale value, and you've got a car that's surprisingly affordable over the long term. Now let's move to a vehicle that has built an almost mythical reputation among mechanics. If you've ever walked into an independent repair shop and asked, "What's the most reliable used car I can buy?" there's a good chance someone eventually says two words: Toyota Camry. The Camry has been one of America's best-selling sedans for decades, and it's easy to understand why. It doesn't try to be flashy. It doesn't try to break lap records. It simply starts every morning and gets the job done. That might not sound exciting until you're running late for work at 7 in the morning. Suddenly, boring becomes incredibly attractive. The Camry's reliability has become almost legendary. Stories of owners driving well beyond 250,000 or even 300,000 miles aren't rare anymore. In fact, many older Camrys are still serving as daily commuters throughout the United States. One reason is Toyota's engineering philosophy. Rather than introducing dramatic changes every few years, Toyota often improves proven components little by little. It may not create flashy headlines, but it produces vehicles that last. For first-time drivers, the Camry offers something many compact cars don't: extra space. The seats are larger. The ride is smoother. The cabin is quieter. Long highway trips become much more comfortable. and passengers in the back actually have enough room to stretch out without negotiating peace treaties over legroom. Safety ratings have consistently remained excellent. Recent Camry models include Toyota Safety Sense, featuring adaptive cruise control, lane tracing assistance, automatic emergency braking, road sign recognition, pedestrian detection, and several other driver assistance technologies. Insurance costs also tend to remain reasonable because the Camry has earned a reputation as a low-risk family sedan rather than a high-performance sports car. Here's something people rarely think about. A beginner doesn't stay a beginner forever. The Camry grows with you. It's just as comfortable for a college student making their first commute as it is for someone starting a career, taking road trips, or eventually driving a family around. Buying one can easily mean owning the same car for the next decade if it's properly maintained. And finally, we've reached the #1 pick. Honestly, there were several cars that could have taken this spot. The Civic deserves it. The Corolla deserves it. The Camry certainly deserves it. But if we had to recommend just one vehicle to almost any first-time driver in America today, the winner would be the Toyota Corolla. Why? Because it simply gets everything right. It's affordable to buy, affordable to insure, affordable to maintain, easy to park, easy to drive, exceptionally fuel efficient, loaded with modern safety technology, and perhaps most importantly, it has earned one of the strongest reputations for reliability in automotive history. Millions of drivers learned behind the wheel of a Corolla, and millions more probably will over the next several decades. It isn't trying to impress anyone with outrageous horsepower or aggressive styling. Instead, it focuses on the things that matter most when you're still building experience behind the wheel: predictability, consistency, dependability. Those qualities might sound boring during a conversation about cars, but they're exactly what keeps ownership enjoyable year after year. One final piece of advice before you buy your first car: don't get caught chasing horsepower or trying to impress strangers at stoplights. Nobody pays your insurance. Nobody pays for your fuel. Nobody pays your repair bills. You do. Choose a car that fits your budget, your lifestyle, and your experience level, not your ego. Because the smartest first car isn't always the fastest one. It's the one that lets you become a confident, skilled driver while costing as little stress as possible along the way. Now I'm curious to hear your opinion. Which one of these cars would you choose as your very first vehicle? Did your favorite make the list? Or do you think another model deserved a spot in the top 7? Let everyone know down in the comments because there are always great recommendations hiding there. And if you enjoyed this countdown and want to see more videos about the most reliable cars, hidden automotive gems, buying guides, and surprising facts from the American car market, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. Drive safely, and I'll see you in the next video.